that was around the time my first husband, Robert, died. And when he died, it kind of gave me this reckless courage. Is like, I can't I can't do books out of fear anymore. I just have to do books that I want to do, and I have to let people misunderstand me. Like, just, if they don't like it, they don't like it. Like, it kind of is like that reckless feeling when you have death so close to you. Like, when death passes you by, you realize, I only have this life to live, so I can't be scared of somebody's mean comment. so I went forward to publishing Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and it was so strange to have that rewarded in such a big way, like.
In the fall of 1999, I went over to my computer, used the dial-up modem. So for those that don't know, we used to keep our computers in just one spot in the house, and we would connect to the internet through the phone line. Made a pretty terrible sound, something like this. It took a very long time to log on, but anyhow, this was also pre-social media, and I had just been invited to a Yahoo group, a listserv of people with shared interests. And this particular listserv was recent graduates of Rhode Island School of Design's illustration program. And it's there that I met my friend, Grace Lin. We had both gone to RISD, but we had just missed one another. And there we were in Somerville, Massachusetts, just north of Boston, and living on the same street. We got to meet each other pre-publication, and through all the ups and downs of living and working through the publishing industry in the past 25 years, I am so proud to have Grace Lin as a very dear friend of mine. And you might know Grace Lin as the celebrated author illustrator who has won a Newbery honor, a Caldecott honor. She's a National Book Award finalist. She won the Legacy Award, a Lifetime Achievement Award in her 40s. Grace is a trailblazer for Asian American representation in children's literature. I was there when her first book was published. This is the very book. It was at Curious George Booksellers in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I thought you might like to see what Grace wrote to me in this book. Her very first book signing. To Jarrett, someday you will be signing a book for me, and I hope you think of something better to write. Best wishes, Grace. If you know Grace, that's her. That's her personality. She's wonderful, and I can't wait for you to meet Grace Lin and learn about her origin story. Real quick, before we get into the episode, if you would like to support the show, you may do so by visiting studiojjk.com/shop. You could pick up a book, you could buy some artwork, you could join the monthly sketch club. Yes, I am sending out little sketches every single month to a group of supporters. If you have a question that you would like answered, because I am answering listener questions, please visit studiojjk.com/podcasts.
Origin Stories with JJK.
Jarrett Krzaska.
Grace Lin, I'm so glad to have you here. Now, I'm interested in seeing how much I actually might not know about you, despite the fact that our friendship extends back to 1999 when we first met, when we were living down the street from one another in Somerville, Massachusetts. But this podcast is all about really getting into some of the earliest experiences that led to who people became. I'd like to lead with the question of, what was your world like when you were a kid?
Oh, okay. What was my world like when I was a kid? I grew up in upstate New York, where my family was one of the only minority families in town. We were the only Asian family for a very, very long time. So that meant that I was the only Asian girl in my elementary school, except for my sisters. And that's how I grew up. It was a really, really strange way of growing up, being always very, very visible as the Chinese girl, as the Asian girl, but also being very invisible as like that was all I was. So that's and that's affected my work for better and worse, my whole life.
And did art or storytelling in any way help you process or cope with that isolation you might have felt in your community?
Yeah. So the big thing is, adults always ask me, when are you going to write a real book? Meaning, when are you ever going to write an adult book? And I always answer probably never, because it was when I was a child, when I was in those elementary school years, I really did turn to books as my friends. I really felt isolated from my peers, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of friends, and who I really felt like were my friends were the books that I was reading, like Anne of Green Gables and Emily the New Moon and all those books. And those characters and in the pages of those books was where I really felt the most welcome, and then any place in my real world.
And did you make any attempts to write when you were a kid? Now, I know that you were drawing at a very young age, and I'd love to get into that. But were you a storyteller on the page when you were little?
I was writing stories, especially when I hit those melodramatic tween years. I remember writing a lot of stories about death, people dying all over the place. I was always just like Anne of Green Gables. She was, she's very romantic and she has all these melodramatic ideas. I really related to that, and I wrote a lot of stories like that. But my biggest foray into writing and illustrating was when I was in 6th or 7th grade, and my teacher it was the end of sixth grade or 7th grade. And as I was leaving the school for the summer, my English teacher handed me a entry form for a book contest called the Written and Illustrated Book Contest for Students. And she said, I noticed that you like drawing pictures. I noticed that you like making books in general. I think you should enter this contest. And so I entered this contest, and it was this big, huge national contest where I wrote my own book, and I illustrated my own book. It was a very melodramatic book about a dandelion that traveled the world and then died at the end. And I won 4th place in that book contest. And with that book contest winning 4th place, I also won $1,000.
Whoa.
And after I won $1,000 and 4th place, I was like, I want to be an author and illustrator forever. So that's what made me decide that that's what I wanted to do as a job, because before that, I hadn't really thought about it as a job. I was just something fun that I like to do. So yeah, I think that was what made me decide I wanted to do it as a job. But I think before that, I was always making books like for like classroom projects and all those things. So I think I was always into the writing and illustrating of books. Oh, before I move on, I do have to finish up that contest story, because this is the part I tell all the kids. Like about 15 years ago, I wanted to know who won 1st place in that contest, because I had won 4th. And the winner of the 1st place that actually got his book published, he's a man now, but back then he was a boy, is Dave Pilkey.
It's such a small world. Grace, I don't know if you knew this about me. One second. Let's see. 1 second here. Did you know that one of my favorite books from middle school was also Anne of Green Gables?
Oh, I didn't know that.
It is, yeah. And I remember, we all judge books by their covers. And I remember as a kid who loved Garfield and Batman and the X-Men, and we had to read this book September of my 7th grade year. And I thought, I'm gonna hate this. And just like you said, I was like, oh, like this character is really funny,
Yeah.
and I really connect with her. So I brought the book back to the school librarian, and she said, well, we have, Anne of Avonlea, and we have Ellen Montgomery wrote more of these books. So I read the first 3 books because my school had them, but then the librarian was like, well, there are more. And I read all, I think there were 10. I would go to the public library. Yeah. Uh-huh. And it eventually became about Anne's grandchildren.
Yep.
Did you read that far into it as well?
I read all to her from her kids.
Did your parents keep art supplies in the house?
Did they keep art supplies in the house? Not extensive art supplies. I think it's just like the stuff that you might have from school, nothing specialized.
Or extra paper. My grandfather would bring home extra manila folders from work and that sort of thing and hand it to me.
Yeah, I don't feel like there was anything super special. It was just like pencils, like the colored pencils you had from school, like maybe those watercolors that are like that are like hard. You have to add water to.
Yeah. So obviously so what I'm getting at is like there was like you had this innate skill and you had this passion, but your parents didn't have like a super artistic home, right? Where like everyone was making art and so what was that like for you though then? So like one point you had to sit them down and say, Mom, Dad, I want to go to college to study art. What was that conversation like?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, so my parents are immigrants, and so I think my love of books was very interesting to them, because to them books were good because books was learning, but they never really understood like books for pleasure. Like all our books at home were mainly like SAT review books, like
Yeah.
things like that. And so it was really at the libraries and the schools and a school that I really fell in love with, like a book for enjoyment. And then when I decided that that was the kind of book that I wanted to make and have as a job, it was really interesting to figure out how to tell my parents. I don't know if I like thought about it in a I don't know if I thought about it in a very fair way to them now, like looking back now as a parent.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you on that as a parent now. I get it. Yeah.
But in some ways, maybe that's good because you need to have that kind of like, if you're going to go to art school and you're going to be if you're going to be an author and an illustrator, you kind of have to have that kind of attitude, that selfish attitude in a way, like, because I told them, like I said, I wanted to be a children's book. At that point, I focused on the illustration. I said I want to be a children's book illustrator, and I wanted to go to art school. And they were not happy about it. Like I said, my parents are immigrants. Nobody had done that in our family, extended family. Nobody, that was far, far from the expected path. I mean, the stereotype is that Asian children, immigrant kids are supposed to be doctors or lawyers, or else they're disappointments. And that is kind of true. In my family, they were pretty horrified. I remember a lot of my parents' Asian friends and relatives would call up like, I would never let my daughter go to art school. I told my son it was medical school or nothing. So there's a lot of that.
Wow, they got phone calls. Imagine if Facebook had existed back then.
I know. There was a lot of judging, and looking back, I really don't understand what kept me like, I don't care. Like like I said, it was like this kind of real selfishness of like, I don't care, I still want to do this. At the same time, even though I did have that I don't care, I'm still going to do this. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It did really affect me. I mean, having this feeling like I'm the disappointment of, like it's this burden of like your parents' disappointment on you at all times, like it's very, it was affecting. It's at the same time, I was still like, oh, well, I'm still going to do it.
And remind me though, where are you in the birth order?
I'm the middle child.
Oh, okay.
So in some ways, I think that's one reason why I was able to get away with it. My older sister went to MIT. She was valedictorian at school, and my younger sister was like this child prodigy. So like while I was taking like algebra, like one, like she was taking, I can't remember, she was taking some kind of, she was like doing college level physics,
advanced AP. So like that was pretty punk rock of you, Grace Lin. I know you probably don't often think of Grace Lin as punk rock, but that was very punk rock of you to proclaim art school.
Well, I think, now I can do my own therapy, like looking back. I think it's because my older sister and my younger sister were so outstanding, and I was already the disappointment. So I was like, what do I have to lose? I might as well be the disappointment and do what I want to do. So I think because it was interesting because now looking back, I wasn't a terrible student. I was like A minus student, right? But like
which
the problem
great.
is it's all comparative, right? But like so when you're like the A student next to like a child prodigy, you're like, you just don't seem that special. Like so you're like, I don't know how to explain it other than like in some ways being the disappointment is what gave me freedom. And in some ways I have to be grateful for that.
Did you feel that? Did you feel that push you to really lean into the art to say, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to excel as much as I can?
Yeah, of course.
You went to Rhode Island School of Design, which is not easy to get into, and it's not easy to get through. It's a difficult program. What was your college experience like?
So I went to the Rhode Island School of Design. The reason why I went to the Rhode Island School of Design is because my parents did not want me to go to art school, like I said, but I was so stubborn. And they said, fine, you can go to art school, but you can only go to the best. We're going to find out which is the best art school. If you get in, then you can go. But other than that, you have to go to someplace else and become a dentist. So
you're like a Hermes from like the opposite of Hermes from Rudolph.
So I was like, okay. And so we researched and we came to the agreement that RISD was the best for what I wanted to do. And I applied early decision and I got in, thank God.
Nice.
Because otherwise I would be a terrible dentist right now. And
There'd be a bunch of kids walking around with mangled teeth, but thankfully they're reading your books instead.
and so that is how I went to school. And I think, no matter, RISD was hard. It was really hard because there's so many people. And I mean, as you know, there's so many people who are just so much more talented than, like, no matter how talented you are, there's somebody way more talented at RISD, like, and if it's not in your grade, it's the upcoming grade, or it was the grade, but like, there's always someone more talented than you. And more talent, or will be better than you, like, that's just kind of the way life is. So it's a good lesson to learn early on, but it's hard. It was hard, but it was one of those things where I think my innate stubbornness just got me through, because it was kind of like, I chose this, I'm going for it, I'm doing this. It was kind of like there's no other option. I felt like, for me, like, this was what I was going to do, and I was going to do the best I could. I mean, I think that's kind of what I've been doing my whole life now.
Well, I mean, I have so much admiration for you, and I've got to have a front row seat to your career so the listeners know. I went to RISD, but Grace and I just missed each other because I was rejected freshman year completely, to the point when my grandfather called the school to say, like, what's the chance of my grandson getting off the wait list? And they just said, he should just go to a different college. and that was the best thing to happen to me, because I learned that I had to work even harder than I'd been working. And so I did transfer. And like Grace said, there's always someone more talented than you. And what I've learned the hard way, and I think you would agree, Grace, that talent's a great thing, but it doesn't take you far. Initiative and stubbornness and motivation will help you get to wherever you want to be. And so I got to be at your very first ever book signing for The Ugly Vegetables. And I love the story about how this book came to be. And of course, so you graduated, it was the late 90s. Publishing is very white, very male protagonist, or it's an animal star. And your very first picture book, which is still in print and still does so well, is a story about you and your mother and the Chinese vegetables you would grow in the garden. But if I recall, there's a very interesting story of maybe a little fib that you told the editor.
Oh, yes.
When you were showing your artwork.
All right, so I graduated 95, 96. Can't remember now. I graduated, and so as you know, even like your senior year, you're sending out postcards. So this is what's so interesting now, because like, this is pre-internet. People didn't have email. People didn't have websites. So you printed up like 500 postcards of your artwork, samples of your artwork, and you just mail them to publishers and editors and art directors all over the country, with the hope that somebody would pick it up and say, like your work, I want to hire you to do a picture book, right? And so, like, already in senior year, we're sending out these postcards, because it's just basically a numbers game in some ways, like.
Yeah, and to clarify, when you say to do a book, you mean like you would be illustrator only?
Yes. That was the idea, was that someone would pick it up and be like, great, I have the perfect manuscript for this artist. And so I kept sending samples of my artwork out. And so I sent it out, and then I didn't, and I sent out like thousands and thousands of postcards, right? And I remember not getting anything back for like for years, except for one. I did get one little response. It was a postcard returned to me, and it said, like your work, send more, which is really nice. And this was from Harold Underdown. And at the time, he was at Orchard Books. I think he was like a editorial assistant there at the time. And I was like, that's really nice, but that doesn't pay the bills, and that was not a job. And so I went and took a job at a giftware company, one of those companies that make t-shirts that say like, world's best dad, and like t-shirts that say, did anyone ever tell you you're terrific? And I worked there for a couple of years, the whole time sending out these postcards of my artwork, like hoping, like, it's like I said, the numbers game, just hoping that some art director, some editor is going to pick up the sample of my artwork and be like, that's perfect. But didn't happen until I got laid off from my job, the giftware company. And I sent out a whole nother batch of postcards. And this time I did hear back from someone. So this is like about 3 or 4 years after I graduated. No, about 2 or 3 years after I graduated. Okay, and I heard back, and it was another postcard from Harold Underdown, and he's like, actually, no, it was not a postcard, I'm sorry. He called me up, and he said, Grace Lin, he's like, I got your new postcard. I'm no longer at Orchard Books. I'm now senior editor at Charlesbridge Publishing, a small publisher outside of Watertown. And I like your work. I've always liked your work, but I have never been able to find a story that goes with your work. And I'm looking at your new postcard and I'm thinking, maybe you might have a story that goes with your work. Do you have a story that goes with your work? And I said, yes, I do, even though I didn't, because this was like the only bite I had gotten in years, and I was like, this was my one opportunity. Like I knew that this was my opportunity. And I didn't want to miss it. And so I said, yes, I definitely have a story that goes with that. And he said, great, send it to me. And I was like, maybe we could do something. And I was like, sure, no problem. And so I got off the phone with him. And then I went to my little room and I saw the postcard I had given him and I had sent to him. And it was a picture of my mother and I when I was a child in our garden. And I was like, why did I paint this picture? Why did I paint this picture? And I was like, oh, I think I painted it because of that memory of how my mom used to grow Chinese vegetables in the garden and how everybody else in the family would grow flowers. And it was so annoying. And so I was like, well, that's kind of a story. So I wrote that and I sent it to him. And to make a long story short, because there's lots of back and forth and revision and all that stuff, that became my first picture book, The Ugly Vegetables, which is right here. Yay!
Hey.
Ugly Vegetables.
And that book kicked off your career, and it really helped change the face of publishing over the years because it sold. Back then there was such people were so short-sighted to say, well, it's only going to sell if there's a boy on the cover, because boys don't read books with like a girl on the cover, right? And we did not see Asian American children front and center on a picture book, on a trade picture book. And I was there at Curious George to celebrate the first book. And so over the years, you have slowly chipped away book after book after book. And something I've always admired about you as well is that you were successful with your picture books, but you wanted to push yourself creatively. So then you started writing some longer books, some chapter books, and suddenly, where the mountain meets the moon, you earned yourself a Newbery honor, a silver sticker for the cover. And so back at art school, especially then, I think because our teachers were teaching to make extra money for their illustrations, they were not writers and they were not people who would present at schools. They didn't really encourage us to write. I mean, there were some writing classes, but we had to seek them out. But the illustration teachers didn't encourage us.
Could you have a big mistake? I mean, I think that's a big mistake. I think we should be teaching kids how to write stories in art school, but that's another tangent.
No. But could you have ever imagined that was like your first major award, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it was for writing, and you have your BFA from the best art school. Like, what was that like for you? Like, what was the phone call like? How did your parents react?
Well, okay. My parents, we'll go backwards. So my parents did not understand. I was like, Mom, Dad, I won the Newbery Honor. And they're like, great. Do you get any money for that? That was their first reaction. I was like, is there prize money? And I was like, no, it's an honor. And they're like, oh, that's good. They were like, no, not impressed. Like, to them, it was just like, hey, I won like
a blue ribbon at the state fair.
Yeah. Best in show at the local library, like something like that, So
you won a poster contest.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they were just not impressed. So, and then like, how did I feel? I was really, really pleased and really, really touched. Like, so writing Where the Mountain Meets the Moon was really, really hard for me. Because there was before we'll have to backtrack quite a bit.
Sure.
So
yes.
we were talking about The Ugly Vegetables, and it was one of the few books that showed Asian American representation at the time. Now, I'm so glad to say that there's so much more, but back then it was there were very, very few. And and when I did The Ugly Vegetables, I remember I received a letter in the mail from a reader who was very upset with me. She said, "Why are you painting all these Asian children with the bowl haircut? You're just reinforcing Asian stereotypes," right? And it was at that moment I realized I am not ready to represent all of Asia, like this was my like the reason why she has a bowl haircut is because that's what I look like when
I saw the pictures.
Like that was what I looked like. It wasn't like, but all of a sudden I realized, oh, my book is supposed to represent all of Asia America all of a sudden. And like, it was a really heavy burden at the time, and one that I didn't feel ready to do. And so I kept doing all of these things. I did all these animal books to try to break out of being like the Asian American author and illustrator. And then when I finally kind of embraced being an Asian American author and illustrator, I really, really cleaved closely to personal stories, like stories that really happened to me. Because I felt like, oh, like The Year of the Dog, which was my first novel, it's all about my life, right? Like, because I was like, oh, if it's about my personal life, if I can root it in my personal history, then that gives me like a shield to say like, this is not all of Asian America. This is just me, this is my Asian America. So I would do that. And like, even like Fortune Cookie Fortunes and Dim Sum for Everyone is always my family, because my family growing up, because it was kind of my way to protect myself from the criticism of not being Asian enough, not being American enough. It was that kind of thing. And Where the Mountain Meets the Moon was the first book that I did that was Asian American, but not rooted in my own personal history. And I was really, really scared to publish it. I was really, really worried that Asians would be like, she's not Asian enough to do that. How dare she change all these Chinese folk tales, like all these things. But the reason why I did it was because I don't know if you remember, but that was around the time my first husband Robert died.
Yes.
And when he died, it kind of gave me this reckless courage. Is like, I can't do books out of fear anymore. I just have to do books that I want to do, and I have to let people misunderstand me. Like, just, if they don't like it, they don't like it. Like it's like that reckless feeling when you have death so close to you. Like when death passes you by, you realize, I only have this life to live, so I can't be scared of somebody's mean comment. So I went forward to publishing Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and it was so strange to have that rewarded so in such a big way, so it was very heartening for me. And for me personally, it kind of felt like not to be woo, but like it kind of felt like Robert saying, "See, I told you you'd be fine."
Yeah.
Like, it's
yeah.
Good. It's good. People like it. So that's how I felt when it won.
Yeah, no, Robert was a wonderful and charming gentleman, and I have absolutely no doubt that he would be up there wanting to be right in that situation and say, "I told you so." And I remember when you first told me you were starting to write chapter books, because incidentally, I was starting to write longer works as well with graphic novels. And it's pretty scary to jump into a new format when you're already comfortable doing what you're doing. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I always kind of felt like if I just made the same character over and over again the rest of my life, like I might be successful, but I'd be pretty unhappy because I want to challenge myself creatively. And you, of course, have gone on to do that and writing different sorts of chapter books and novels and going back. And when you went back to picture books, your work had definitely transformed. And then you went and got yourself a Caldecott honor. So take that, any kind of RISD professor who might not have been kind. I won't name names, but we all know who that person is. He still teaches there. But and then you won the Legacy Award. You won like the Lifetime Achievement Award in your 40s. Well, okay. I'm going to ask you, even though I know because we talk all the time, what was that like when they called you with a legacy award?
Okay, so
Were
the
you just like,
legacy,
was this a mistake? What were you like,
yeah, the
I'm too
legacy
young
was
for this.
completely unexpected. The legacy, I feel like all awards though are a blessing and a curse, right? They're a blessing and a curse, and it's just a matter of getting through the curse to find the blessing, right? So in terms of the legacy, I did not have a book coming out that year. And as an author, that's such a lovely year when you don't have a book
Yes,
come
it
up
is. Yeah,
around.
we should explain. We should explain to the listeners. So all of the authors understand that whatever Monday in January, at the end of January, they're going to announce all of the big library awards, the Caldecott, the Newbery, all of them. And we all know that the winners get a secret phone call a couple of days prior. So it's a pretty arduous weekend for anyone who had a book published that previous year because you're just hoping the phone rings. It
Yeah.
probably won't though.
And it's not even just waiting for the not waiting, but like hoping for the phone call. It's all the buzz ahead of time. Like people, like it's all like the
Yes.
months and months of librarians and people talking
Speculation
yeah, or not talking about your book. Like that's even worse. It's like I'm not even in the running. And then when you're in the running, it's terrible because you're like, that's why I'm not going to win, and that's why I am. Like so. It's both. It's like it's a really hard time as an author, I think. But when you don't have a book in the running at all, like because you're not eligible, not because your book's not good, like so like just say like you just don't have a book come out that year, you're just like I don't
cool as a cucumber.
Yeah.
Cool as a cucumber.
No
Just so chill. Yeah.
So that year I did not have a book coming out, or I didn't have a book coming out. So I was like, chillax, like, yeah. I wonder who's going to win this year. Like, so interesting who the buzz is, like all of those things. And my friend Alvina, who's also my editor, like about a couple days earlier had said, oh, we are going to have a kind of Zoom, because the pandemic was quote unquote over, but we're still like being careful. We're going to have a Zoom birthday party for Victoria Stapleton, who's our school library marketing manager. And we're going to have all these authors on there. I'm going to sing her happy birthday. So can you be there? And I was like, sure. I love Victoria. She's awesome. And so I remember that day I went for a run and I was coming back and I was like, oh, I might be a little late for the birthday party. I was like, no big deal. And so Alvina's like texting me like, are you coming? And I was like, oh, I'm coming. I was like, I'm just coming in for the run. I'll have to like quickly wash my face. And I was like, wait, it's not a formal thing, right? Maybe I'll put some earrings on. And she's like, yeah, you should wash your face, maybe. Like, and so I get on and I'm like and I'm thinking like all these squares are showing up and I'm like not recognizing, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know any of these authors. And then then they tell me that slowly somebody comes on, and I don't know, they tell me that I've won the legacy. Like, Grace, we're so glad you're here. And I was yeah, where's Victoria? And they're like,
so was that all the committee members that were popping up on the screen then?
Members, and they're all like, Grace, we're so glad you're here. And I was like, yeah, I'm so sorry, like, where's Victoria? Like, Victoria's not here yet, right? And they're like, no. And then they're like, I'm so and so, and this is so and so, and this is so and so, and we are the legacy committee. I'm like, that's nice. Like, I'm like, not.
You thought they were there for Victoria too.
I'm like, that's great. I guess I'm so glad that you're here to support Victoria, the legacy committee. How nice. And slowly, like, they're like, and we have like decided that you are the winner. We're gonna honor you this year with. And I was like, what? Like, they actually have it on video where you can see me like.
That's fantastic.
I'm like, what is going on here? And I was like, that one was a complete surprise. And not that the Caldecott, it's not so much that it was not a surprise, because like you never know, right? But
you never know.
Like I said, there's all this buzz, and you're always when it's a book award, you're always kind of hoping, even if you know in your heart of hearts that you don't have a chance, right? Like,
like a year that I would have a Star Wars book out, I'd be like, well, maybe they'll give one to a Star Wars book this year. You're still thinking,
like so when I got the phone call for the Caldecott, it was like, huh? But there's always like a little bit of like almost like a relief, like, oh my gosh. But like this was like a complete surprise.
Wasn't on your radar at all.
But
no.
it was, and I am so super grateful. But you know, it was kind of, it was, like I said, a little bit of a, and I don't, when I say curse, I don't want any, I hope the legacy committee never hears this and takes it the wrong way. I don't mean it that way. It's all this like I kept
with pressure, inner pressure, right? Like,
yeah, I kept feeling like this inner pressure, like I don't think I deserved this award. And I kept feeling like, I feel like when people hear that I received it, they're like, she didn't deserve that award. You know, like it was like this, always this, this feeling of like, oh, do you remember when, Barack Obama was given the Nobel Peace Prize and everybody's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of felt like, I think that's how they feel about this. Like,
Oh, no.
that's legacy. Like,
not at all, dude. Not at all.
I mean, that was kind of the, I think what I was telling you earlier about writing Where the Mountains the Moon and just publishing it. This is the lesson that I've had to learn over and over and over again in my career and my life. You know how they say they keep giving you the same lesson over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And my lesson has always been, I just have to let people misunderstand me. I just have to not, you know, like, I have to be like, well, if they don't think I deserve it, then oh well. You know, like, I think that's been the whole thing. Like, if they don't,
that's a them problem. That's a them problem.
If they don't think I should be writing this book because I'm not age enough, oh well. You know, like, I just have to be like, if they don't think I'm good enough, oh well. You know, like that's the, like I said, the lesson that I've had to learn over and over and over again throughout my career. Do you have a lesson like that? Where you feel
well, yeah. I mean, you know, so the listeners know, like, so Grace and I met on Yahoo groups, like on a listserv. So way back in the late 1900s, when we would connect to the internet through the phone line, there was no social media, but you might get an invitation to be a part of a Yahoo group. And it was a Yahoo group of RISD illustration alumni. And there was maybe just like 10 of us on there at the time. And Grace and I lived pretty much on the same street in Somerville, Mass. And there was this little group of us in Boston. And we'd meet and we'd talk about publishing. And Grace gave me some key advice on when I was sending out my promotional postcards. And in a way, like in the world of books, we've grown up together, right? Like we started around the same time. We branched out around the same time. I've found that the more nervous or afraid I am to tackle a project, the more important it is. And also the more exciting it is. So for instance, like, so Hey Kiddo, my graphic memoir, it's an intense story. I was nervous that, as you can imagine, I was known as the happy lunch lady guy. And now I'm going to write the story that's really intense and dark. And I can only, and of course, I can only speak from my experience from dealing with a parent with an opioid addiction, you know, like, and hopefully, and I found like the more specific you are about your own experiences, somehow the more universal it becomes in some odd way. But yeah, I think fear is a pretty good thing to hold on to. And I think that's good for young artists to hear too, because young artists are always asking me like, when am I ever going to be confident? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. I hate my stuff. And same thing. So my second book, Baghead, was in Newsweek. And they recommended 10 books for the fall of 2002. And then there was a little picture of Baghead, the character. And I went down to the CVS and I bought like 10 copies. And I brought it back home. I showed my grandmother and she was smoking her cigarette. And she's like, why did you buy all those copies just for that one little picture? Like, it's Newsweek. And so there's an interesting thing about growing up in a household that is not artistic, wanting to be a creative person, and still, like, no matter how much you achieve, they might not really understand it.
Yeah, the validation will never quite be there.
It'll never be there. But the one thing that I took, I think my grandfather was like, okay, this kid is going into art school. I'm just going to instill a work ethic into him. And he's like, he once said to me, someday I'm going to be gone. And if there's only one lesson you remember that I taught you in this life, it's that you have to work hard. So post-college, and I was sending out those postcards and not hearing back from people, my grandfather would call me and he'd say, do you have a job yet? And I'd say, well, yeah, I write and illustrate books for kids. And there'd be a pause and he'd say, well, who pays you for that? Right? Like, you need to make an income one way or another. And now as a parent, I understand the fear a parent has for your kid to someday be able to be independent and successful in their chosen field. My middle kid and Grace's kid are buddies. They're the same age. They're both artists. My kid has already told me she wants to go to art school, and now I'm nervous for a whole other reason.
Yep. Mine too. She's like, I want to be a manga artist. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, I know. So, I think the lesson there is like the best a parent can do is love their kid and support them the best they know how, and curiosity and a hard work ethic and a good dose of insecurity will get you pretty far in this life.
So, I do want to say, I don't know how much time we have left, but before we go, I want to make sure that I give you your props for, I feel like, the success of my career. Like, I feel like, I mean,
Me?
yeah, I feel like, honestly, like, after I graduated, I had books out, like, I did not really understand promotion, right? And like, that was something, and honestly, I give you huge props for this, because, and even now, every author and illustrator, they're like, oh, I hate promotion, I can't do, like, and like, they're so allergic to it, but you, from early on, just embraced it, and you're like, this is what I have to do to get my books out, and this is what, and when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, that's true. And I feel like one of the things people say to me is like, oh, I never saw, and there were other Asian books out there, never saw any Asian American books out there before I saw yours, and I'm like, well, one of the reasons why you saw mine was because I pushed it so hard.
Yeah.
And I pushed it so hard because I saw how you pushed your books.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, I will do that for mine, like, so in a lot of ways, you're like, you've trickled down, like what you do is like, I feel like it's been a really great thing. And, it's been I feel like we give book promotion not we, but I think the greater world, greater artistic children's book world, give book promotion kind of a bad rap. But I think that it's just part of what we do, and I think that if you don't embrace it, then you're doing your work and the kids that need your book a huge disservice. And I really think that you really, to me, took away that stigma of like book promotion and really showed me how to do it. So I really want to give you.
Oh, I did not know that, and I appreciate it. It's nothing. I didn't learn it from RISD when I was there, because they didn't teach us business classes then.
I never learned any of that.
Dude, I will say they do now. I think it goes back to what my grandfather taught me about hard work and hustle and just getting yourself out there. And when you start to promote your work, you can feel silly or tacky, but there's a way to promote your book without doing so selfishly.
Yeah.
And because you want to share your story with people, and you want to be able to make more books. And when we used to meet at this place called the Someday Cafe, which it's not there anymore in Davis Square in Somerville, but there was something so beautiful about going to the Someday to dream about the future.
Yeah.
And you were the one to say, you know what, you've been sending your promotional postcards to the art directors like all of our teachers told us. You should send some to the editors. And that's what led to my first book being published. And this is an insular industry, and what we do is so unique. And I would encourage anyone who's in any creative field to be able to find a small group of people who do a similar thing and just support one another. Grace and I are in a group with Mike Corrado and Lisa Yee, and I would go insane and run up the wall. I can't even imagine how I would operate without being able to bounce ideas off of you. And because, Grace, I know that you're always second guessing yourself or feeling insecure, I'm going to tell you two stories. I think it's a good place to end this, because I want you to know how big of a deal you are. And look, I know listeners, you said like she has all these stickers of National Book Award finalists. I know that you're still like, I don't know is this career even working out? And so in my slide presentations, where I talk about how I got published, and I talk about Someday, and then one of my slides is a picture of ugly vegetables and what you wrote to me, and you inscribed it. I hope someday you write a book to me or something like that. And And I feel the energy in the room change because people are so excited that I know Grace Lin. They are so excited. And the other story was just happened today. It just happened this morning.
Okay.
I dropped my son off at an art camp, and one of his camp mates, who is a fan of Lunch Late, came up to talk to me. And then almost in a hushed whisper, he said, "And do you know Grace Lin?" And I said, "I do. She's a really good friend of mine." He said, "Sometimes I see her around town. Every now and then I see her at a restaurant and she's having dinner with her kid, but I'm too shy." So like, it's like if there was a gossip magazine for children's book authors, there would be candid photos of you holding shopping bags because you're that big of a deal, Grace Lin.
That's so funny.
And you're a game changer for just being true to yourself. And I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your work. I appreciate you as a person. I appreciate you as a friend. All of it. So and the listener,
mutual. I mean, honestly, like I feel like. I think a long time ago you were on my podcast and I was like, whenever I always get excited when something good happens to you because I feel like that means something good's gonna happen to me right afterwards. Like I feel like we're always on the same like, ooh, that just happened to Jared. Something good's gonna happen to me.
We have been very fortunate. I hesitate to use the word lucky because we worked really hard. So I prefer to use the word fortunate. Like I feel really fortunate because, hard work alone, obviously there's a little bit of luck, but luck feels like it's just, you stumbled upon it. And I also love that we are in our own spaces where we typically film things, but we live a half a mile apart from one another. And if you're lucky, keep an eye out in Northampton. You might just see Grace Lin running errands.
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Now it's going to be all DoorDash from here on out for Grace Lin. You're gonna become. This is your era in which you just become a hermit and don't ever leave.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks so much, Jared.